Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Foreigner Footy Files. I'm Natalia Pinkney, and this is episode 13. Your foreignness is foreign to them. This week, I want to address a disconnect issue as a foreigner, but per usual, it is time for a poem that is a piece from my path. This title of this poem is also, just like the episode title, Your Foreignness is Foreign to Them. Sometimes they just can't see just how hard it can be, navigating daily trying to get from A to B. Barely speaking your first language makes it hard to find people to hang with. Ordering a meal or asking for directions, they got no idea the stress that invokes in us. It's easy to forget when their life has a safety net. For me, I gotta be reminded daily that I ain't from here and some things ain't easy. Needing a piece of paper to play the sport I've given up so much in favor for. Having documents to prove I can play ball, sitting and waiting for someone to call. Letting me know I've got the okay, saying it's all good and I can stay. For when a contract can make or break livelihood, you really become aware of reality and what's good. And it ain't no one's fault but the systems that play, but please don't forget what I go through on my day to day. All right, y'all. So this signing windows really got me inspired to speak on some foreigner experiences. So sorry for the continued break from the files in the folder with Australia. I will get back to that, I promise. Most likely the next episode, but I think I've said it before. This signing window has been a bit hectic, and in the events of trying to sign with a new team, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Per usual, it's never easy. It doesn't go as you plan, and sometimes things throw you for a loop. But I know things are going to work out, and when they do, y'all will know what's good. I will inform everybody on the final results of all the fruits of my labor. But that being said, it's really made me think about just how different things are for foreigners in football and women's football, and how it's easy to disconnect for the people that are from here, how easy it is for them to disconnect from the mentality of, okay, this person is not from this country. This person does not have all the same resources or the same ability to just, go home or go to see a parent or a loved one when they're stressed, or in between seasons have a concrete place to go sometimes, and trying to jump around to finding new places that you can call home. It's stressful, it's hard, and when you have a new teammate and they're a foreigner, but of course they become a part of your team, it's easy to forget the realities that a foreigner can go through. And being a foreigner is complicated. It's intricate. And there are simply things teams and coaches just don't get. And for one, as a Black foreigner, I'm just always assumed to be from Africa. That's something that I feel is like a huge disconnect for people, especially in European countries, when they see me, a foreigner. For one, just being Black in white spaces, they assume I'm a foreigner. Y'all don't know me. I could be born and bred here in Germany. Yes, my ancestors are most likely not from here, but I could be German. And I really wish that people would stop making the assumptions about people that aren't white in Europe, that they most likely are from another country. And if they're Black, you're assuming they're from an African country. I'm going to need everybody to stop making that assumption. Okay. But that's just tired and old. Like, to be honest, when you see somebody that don't look like you in a very diverse place like Europe or America, really the world at this point, to be honest, there's some select places that it's quite undiverse, but for the most part, especially in sports, let's stop assuming where people are from. And, it's not harmful to ask, like, hey, where are you from? Are you from here? I like to hear somebody speak before I ask that question or make any assumptions about where they could be from, because Excuse me. As I said, you never know someone's background. Like, I have had several teammates here in Germany that were black. And I don't know, even for me, to be honest, I was like, oh, shoot, German's your first language, or maybe your second language if, your parents are not from Germany, they're from another country, and so your home language is probably something else, but fluent in German. And I've made the assumption before. And so I just wish that we could all just stop making those assumptions about people just from looking at them and making the decision for yourself that, oh, they must not speak German, or they must not be from here, or if it's not even German, like, in Switzerland, it was a white area. It was a very white country, but there were people of color. Actually, in Lugano, where I lived, it was a lot of black folk, like a lot of black folk, and they spoke Italian fluently, first language, because that's where they were born and where they have grown up. Yes, their parents are maybe African or Jamaican or from another place, but to assume that somebody doesn't know your language, or to assume that somebody can't speak a language just because they don't necessarily look like what you think they should look like in that space, let's stop doing that. Let's stop making those assumptions. But for two, as a woman playing football, barely taken seriously as is, it's one of those things where you, even just meeting people on the street and talking to them about, oh yeah, I'm here to play football, I'm from here, da 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 da, and it's just like, oh, why are you here for sports? It's like, because I am. It's such a weird response to, like, have a, not negative, I don't want to call it a negative response, but like a skeptical response about, like, oh, you're here to play sports. Why are you here to play sports? Why is anyone anywhere? I mean, in reality, it's because football is my job. And sometimes it's been my second job, depending on the visa situation in the country. But let's stop making frowny faces at people for what they say that they're in a country to do. Because at first it was kind of like, haha, yeah, I know women's football. Why would I be here? But now it's getting to the point where it's like, women's football is on the map. The Women's World Cup is going on right now. We play ball, okay? Yes, it may be more of a shock thing than a negative reaction of like, oh, shit, like, you're here to play football. That's super cool. Most of the time I do get that reaction, like, oh, that's super cool. You're here to play football. That's really cool. And how did you get here? And what brought you here? And then it's the follow-up question of, oh, well, you're American. Why would you not play football in America? Isn't it better there? That is probably a topic for another podcast, but it's one of those conversations that I kind of dread having, because I hate having to convince people that women's football matters enough for me to be able to be playing it in another country at a professional level. Take it seriously. It is a legitimate profession. We may not get paid like it, but playing football is a legitimate profession. Yeah, and in clubs, not understanding full picture on things, oof, like, they understand you're a foreigner, quite clearly. They don't bring you onto the team, especially if you come to a country where you don't speak the language, that obviously they know you're a foreigner. It's not that I'm thinking that they're so absent-minded that they're like, oh, you're one of us. No, not one of those things. More on an absent-minded level of, once they've gotten you here and you're settled, you're officially on the team, or even before things are official, but you're here and you're in their space and they see you and they're speaking to you. And then there's just certain things that get swept under the rug, or maybe become absent-minded about, like simple things to them, like travel, or going to a grocery store, ordering things, organizing paperwork. It's forgetting that we need help. And it's not to say that we're not self-sufficient. I'm very self-sufficient. I am my own agent. I have found my own jobs. I've found my own places to live. I've gotten myself around on public transportation just fine without help. I'm self-sufficient. It does not take away from the fact that I am not from the places that I have been playing in and living in. It is not a place that is considered home. Australia was a bit different. I was there for 3 years. By the end of that, it was definitely home. I'm now going on my second year here in Germany, hoping that it's a bit longer. So I will hopefully be able to call it home, in the future. But for now, 1 year in a country is a long time, but it's also no time. Especially when within that year you're still learning a language, you're still getting accustomed to the ways of life, you're learning transportation, or you're hopping around like I've been doing. And so, they may get to a point where it's like, well, you've been here. So, like, you got it. And it's like, okay, I may get some of it, but I ain't got it. I'm still not from here. Like, it's easy for people to forget once you become comfortable that that's not your place of living all year round, 365 for the past how many years that they've probably been living there since birth, So there have been times where I had to sit and think like, do they remember I'm not from here? And not even in like a shady way at all. It's just like a genuine, like, do they forget I'm not from here? Like, do they need a reminder that, hey, I need some help? You know what I'm saying? Like, that this paperwork, I can do some Google Translate, but on some real world technicalities, like, I have to say official documents, government paperwork, that's the stuff that stresses me the most. Obviously, Australia was a bit easier because I spoke English and they speak English, well, a version of English. But even still, like, official government documents are stressful for everybody, whether you speak the language or not, whether you can read it or not. Israel with Hebrew, Lord. Reading it, no, absolutely not. I think I can maybe decipher between yes and no, because that's all that enough. But other than that, like, when you cannot fluently read a language, that's a whole thing as well of like menus, paperwork, signs in streets in public. Those are the little things that I think that players or teammates or clubs, they forget that those are really stressful things. And they seem little to them because they're normal for them. It's a daily thing for them, But for us, when you're walking down the street and you're trying to figure out, oh, okay, what does that sign even say? How do I even pronounce that? Like, if you're trying to ask for directions, you may be able to like say the word in a way, but at least from my experience here in Germany, if you don't pronounce it 100% correctly, sometimes they really don't understand. And you can be like, I know I'm saying it right, but like you say a letter a little bit wrong, or your inflection is different, or the way that you pronounce it is not how that region pronounces that word. So those are just like little things that I feel like are commonly forgotten about in terms of, clubs and teammates and coaches when dealing with foreigners. And, like, there really have been moments, like in Australia, where a visa department has made statements about being focused on Australians and Australian players. And I'm like, you're a visa department. Your entire job is working with foreigners. Australians don't need visas. Domestic players don't need visas. So you telling me that you are focused on Australian women's football and the development of Australian women players as a visa department, how's that supposed to make me feel? Like, am I really supposed to feel like you have my best intentions to help me get my visa done accordingly when you're telling me straight to my face that your main priority is making sure that Australian women football players have the first opportunity? What's the point of your department if you're not here to help foreigners with their visas? It's just little things like that that I've encountered over my experiences where it just becomes very clear that even though there are sectors in the government and positions in clubs that are required to help foreigners and be there for foreigners and keep things organized, that at the end of the day, sometimes they really just be worried about their own. And that's normal. That is, I'm not trying to act like that's out of the ordinary at all, but it does hinder experiences for foreigners. It does make it harder for us to want to stay or continue the journey. And let's be real, when you look at some of the top teams around the world, the best teams have the most integrated teams. Like, they've got international players, they got domestic players. Some teams are so good that they got barely any domestic players. They got people from all over the world playing for their team. I mean, they got maybe 4 people that are from that actual country, but their team is damn good. because we need diversity. We need unity. We need talent from all over the place. You can't depend on just local talent all the time. And sometimes you get lucky, like my high school, we just got super lucky that the water in our area was just producing athletes, pumping them out. So in my high school sports, we had a lot of talent, and so we got super lucky that every year we was good. But then you just got some places in some countries where you gotta outsource. And, I just think it's really important to remember that diversity and inclusion and having foreigners, it's super important on a team, sports especially. It's a team sport. You need to be able to have people that have different skill sets from all over the place that can bring different skills, bring different perspectives. Italy plays different than Switzerland, even though it's right on top of it. Australia plays different than Israel. Every place that I've been, I've developed a different style of play. And when you can bring in players from all over the world who can bring different aspects and talents and styles of play, it can bring a beautiful thing together if you can figure out how to put them together like that. And I think that it's really, it's important, it's imperative that teams and clubs and coaches remember that I'm more than just my talent. I'm not just here to just play ball. I'm here to live. It's very important to remember that we are just people navigating in a very new space, and we need support and we need help. And the disconnect is very genuine most of the time. I don't think it's ever really a malicious thing, but I think that it very much hinders experiences sometimes. It makes things a lot more difficult. And I think at this point in my career and a lot of my former teammates' careers, we are speaking out about how we just need certain things. And I know this is just like a reality / living in your own bubble thing. And it's easy to forget that your reality is not someone else's reality. But you kind of can't do that in this profession. You kind of can't do that when you have a specific set of guidelines and areas for foreign athletes, and when you already have foreigner limits, language barriers, travel troubles, absent-mindedness really adds to it. And for us as the foreigners, for me as a foreigner, it adds an extra level of hecticness when all I want to do is ball. Obviously it's a bit different when you have to, for visa purposes, have a day job or a night job, whatever, if you can swing it with your schedule. But when you need to have another job, and it's football and that other job. But for the most part, we're here to play ball. We're here to play football. And so when you become absent-minded to the things that can really make or break an experience for us, it's troubling. And I get it. It's easy to forget in some cases. Take my situation in Australia. It's a bit of a spoiler, so I haven't quite gotten there yet in the file, in the folder of Australia, but my coach really downplayed my visa issues. At one point, I had stressed a lot about how much a visa would really, really help my case. I'd be able to stay in Australia. I can continue to play. I'd be able to play pro. All the things that a visa would improve in my situation of being in Australia, because Australia, as I mentioned before, they've got their working visa. So I was able to go to Australia, get a normal job and work full time and be able to play football as well. And they've got that for over the course of 3 years. Now the catch is you have to work on a farm in order to earn your next year. So within your first year of being in Australia, you got to work on a farm for 3 months to get your second year visa. While on your second year visa, to get your third year visa, you need to work on a farm for 6 months. So half of the time of the second year that you've already worked your butt off for in a farm, you're spending on another farm to stay for a third year. And then I believe it only goes as far as 3 years. So technically it's kind of like, all right, work for 3 months, get another year, work for 6 months, and get your final year. And then your final year, you can kind of chill and just do normal work. But again, that's a whole nother episode. I'll get to that folder and file. But in my situation of wanting to play professional football and wanting to stay in Australia and move up higher and get to what was then W League, I think it's now just A League. I have to double check myself on that. But I needed the visa. And my coach was just so preoccupied with the fact that, like, I was there. I was there for years at this point. I had a job, I had a house, I was secure, I had a car, like everything on the surface level was like, you're good, you're here, you've been here, you stayed here, you're going to be able to stay here, like, no stress. But that's not how reality is. And I think because things like that are just paperwork to y'all, just domestic folks. It's just paperwork. It's just, sending it to the government, getting a stamp, and it's coming back. Like, no stress, no. But it's career breaking for me. Paperwork is career breaking. It is tedious. It's annoying. It can seem like it just takes a lot of time, especially here in Germany. They love their paperwork. And when I say paperwork, I mean literally paperwork. Like in Australia, everything was electronic. Even my visa was electronic. I didn't have a stamp in my passport, I don't believe, for Australia. I didn't have a paper visa. Everything was done online. So everything was electronic. As opposed to here, you get things paper, booked, stamped, official, get 3 copies. You know what I'm saying? So everywhere it's different. But at the end of the day, that process of getting those things done is make or break. If I don't have all my ducks in a row in my paperwork, I can't play. I can't stay, And if a domestic player doesn't get a certain paper done or whatever, then, they just got to wait a week or so and then they can play again. For me, we got signing windows. So if certain things don't get done within certain windows of time, we don't get to play. I don't get to play. I won't have a team. And those are scary realities that I think just like slip past the mind of people who live in the country that you're playing in as a foreigner. And we never forget that we're foreigners. I never forget that I'm a foreigner. I think person to person it varies. Do you have an agent? Can you speak the language? Do you have friends / family there? None of that negates that we need support at all by any means, but it definitely does change the situation. And I think it definitely changes the way that the club looks at you. And I'll get into more specifics, experiences in the files of the countries that pertains to, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's Australia, it's Switzerland, Israel, all the countries that I've played in. There's been moments where there's just been like a lapse of, I guess, attention to the fact that I'm not from there. And for me personally, as the example that I gave of like having an agent, okay, when I had an agent when I went to Israel, my agent would speak to the club or the coach or the manager on my behalf, so then I've got somebody with a more, higher stature of professionalism speaking on my behalf. So sometimes things would get taken more seriously and get fixed super quick. Whereas when I haven't had an agent, which is 99% of the time that I've been doing this, sometimes not I want to say that they didn't take me seriously, but it didn't happen as quickly because it was coming from just the player. You know what I mean? So there were times where I would express, hey, I need this, or hey, I need help with this, or hey, like, do you like, in Australia, I needed a car. And so it was one of those things where it's like, I have a normal day job and I still have to drive 45 minutes to Logan to get here for training. I need a car. Because if not, I'm taking a train, I'm meeting a teammate, I'm putting people out, I got to help people pay for petrol. It was super complicated, so getting a car was easier. But because I wasn't Australian, I didn't know how the systems work. I didn't know which companies to trust. I don't know what types of cars. They got the weirdest types of brands of cars over there. And, so those are little things that I feel were just kind of absentmindedly like, oh, yeah, we'll help you get a car. 2-3 weeks go by, no car. And it's like, okay, if you're from here, if you're Australian, typically you either already have a car because we're grown adults and typically have a car, or you live with your family and your parents and you can borrow someone else's car. But being a foreigner and then being alone, I didn't have that. So, that's just another example of how when people kind of drag their feet on things that to them are very blasé or like, yeah, we'll get you a car, no worries. And it's like, no, like I need it. Like I don't have family or friends to back up on to borrow a car to get to a training or a game that's far away, so just the attention to detail has slipped. And then also like the language thing, when I started to learn each language more and more, so Italian and Hebrew and now German, it also makes it a lot easier for people to forget that you're not from there. Not necessarily that, I mean, typically the accent's different, so they can obviously tell that you're not from there. But the more you learn a language, obviously, the better you can communicate, the better you can navigate, and the easier it is to be accommodated for, because it's like, okay, they can speak the language, they can get around. We don't need to babysit them in the city trying to find a place to go. Okay, you can read it a bit more. You can go to a restaurant and read the menu. We don't have to help you order. So you feel like less of needing to be babied, or your hand doesn't need to be held as much, which is great. That's the whole point. You want to assimilate. You want to learn the languages. But sometimes that helps in the forgetfulness of like, oh, well, you've been fine. You learn the language. You can speak to people. You're cool. You're chilling. You're navigating. And it's like, even if I can speak your language, it doesn't negate the fact that I'm not from here, and I still need help to figure out a lot of things. And I think it's something to be mindful of and prepare yourself for as a foreigner going to a different country, that, you almost have to remind them sometimes. And yes, there are responsibilities that clubs need to take, but let's be real, sometimes they don't. And so you need to protect yourself and advocate for yourself and let your needs be known, because you can take care of you the best. There's no one else that can make sure that you're good more than you. And if you don't speak up, they'll never know that you needed the help. So it's also on you. You got to let these people know where you're coming from. Okay, yes, maybe I'm semi-fluent in your language, but I still don't understand exactly how this works or how that works, or where I need to go exactly. How can I get there? What's required? As a local, you have the answers to those questions. So we're going to ask y'all. We're going to ask y'all questions. And it's just something that I want people who are going to be foreigners in other countries to prepare themselves for, that when people are living their day to day, most of the women that I have played with have normal day jobs, and football is their side job. So when it comes to the football side of things, for them, it's just like the side thing. For you, it's the main thing as the foreigner. And you have to remind them that, okay, this is just for funsies for you, maybe. Even if it's not for funsies, and this is something that they take seriously. This is something that if they could get paid enough, they would make it their normal day job as well. They would have only football. Doesn't change the fact that they are having the advantage of being from there. So remind the people around you, let it be known what you need. And that leads me into our segment of I wish I knew that. So I wish I knew how assimilating would affect my foreign status. Because when you think about assimilating, you think about only the positive benefits of it. Like, okay, I understand the language, I understand the lingo and the slang, I understand the public transport systems, I get how to navigate socially. I understand how to carry myself, maybe how to dress, how to address people. You're figuring out all the cultural things that you need to adjust to, and you only think of those as positives, but I never realized how much they can kind of diminish my foreigner status, quote unquote, in their eyes of like, okay, you're not from here, but you've been here for a minute and you're now learning our ways. And so you're becoming more, independent, self-sufficient. You don't need the help as much. And yes, that's true in a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways where in the places that I've lived, the more I learned how to speak and act and get around, I didn't need as much help, but sometimes it made them feel that I didn't need any help. And I needed to just like put it in gear to remind them that it didn't mean that I was A-okay all by myself. Because if you think about it, even as an American, when I'm in America, I still need help. So imagine how a foreigner feels in your country. They're always going to need help. Everyone needs help with something all the time. So double that for a foreigner. Remember that we need to be guided sometimes, or just given some advice, or reminded about a certain custom or a way. That's something else that I've experienced of when you're getting to know an area and you have a slip up on like a cultural norm and someone gets on you. It's like, hey, we don't do that here. That's not how that is. You've been here. You should know. And it's like, I've been here, but I forget. And there's times where, I'll slip into a momentary lapse when I'm like, maybe I just had a really long call with someone from home. And so my brain has been in the mindset of like my American ways or my Philly ways or talking to people or like slang or addressing folks. Like something that I do a lot is I address people as bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my bitch. And for me, culturally, where I'm from, how we rock, that's a term of endearment 99% of the time. It can be used as an insult still, but that was also something that I needed to remember coming here and going anywhere, that sometimes I'd be like, "Hey, yo, bitch." And like girls would be like, "Excuse me? Did you just call me a bitch?" And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 not like that. Like that's not what I meant." And so after like a 4-hour phone call with my girls from home saying like, "Bitch this, bitch that," you know what I'm saying? And then you go out, you see a friend or a teammate in the country that you're living in, you're like, "Hey, bitch." And it's like, "Oh, they don't do that here." So it's a two-way street. You know, we got to give people grace that the bubble that they live in is their world and their life that they're living in, but also like other way around of like we're having to try and get into those bubbles that y'all have here. So cut us some slack when we slip up. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I never really realized how much getting more in tune with the cultures that I was living in, how that would take away from their ability to remember that I am still a foreigner. And there are a lot of things that I will need support on and help. And that's something that I will always feel that the club should be responsible for. If you have someone leaving their home country to come play for you, you're responsible for their well-being to an extent. I think definitely age and experience and circumstantial things make a difference. I mean, if someone's 17, you got a lot more responsibility to make sure that they're okay rather than someone like me who's 28. But it doesn't take away from the fact that no matter how much I learn of your customs and your culture and your ways and your language, I'm still going to need support. It doesn't take away from the fact that I am not from where I'm currently playing in. It doesn't change that fact. And now for trust me on this one. Trust me, speak up about your struggles, your needs, and your wants. Foreigners, please do not be shy. Let the coaches, let your team captains, if you're too nervous to go to the authority figure of your coach, let your team captains know, let your manager know, let people know what you need. Because as much as I can say, it's their responsibility and they need to take care of us as foreigners. And there's things that we need. There's sometimes, like I said, because of the just human nature of being absent-minded at times and being accustomed and comfortable with somebody, you just forget. Or you don't think about it because it's not something that they need to worry about on a day-to-day basis. You know, like visas and that type of stuff and trying to figure out documentation, all the little things that are intricate and important as a foreigner. They don't need that day to day. They're always on our mind as foreigners, but they don't always have that in the forefront of their mind, especially when it comes down to coaches and managers. Once the season gets going, their mindset is on balling. It's on the games, it's on trainings, it's on the organization of the team as a whole. For me, in my particular situation, like last season with Zodbrücken, I wasn't the only foreigner. There was another foreigner, but she had been there for a couple of years, but I was the only new foreigner. I was the only new person on the team that wasn't from there that needed support. And so even if the club has experience with foreigners before, especially higher levels, they've definitely had their experience before. But if they haven't had a foreigner in a while, or if you're the only one for that season, so you're one person that they got to think about, in your mind you may feel, I'm just one person. How can you not, get it under control? I'm one person. But for them, you're just one person. It's different when you got 10 people. You can't have 10 foreigners. I'm pretty sure most countries you can't have more than 5. Let's say you reach the limit of 5 foreigners, right? You have 5 women that you need to be responsible for. 5 women that need housing, that need visas, that need transport, everything. When you've got just one person, and in my case, one person, I pick up languages very easily. I'm quite easy to get adjusted to new environments. So I take very little time to get comfortable somewhere. So it's quite easy for clubs to be like, oh, she's good. She all right. She's smart. She's strong. She got it taken care of. She good. It's on me to remind them and say like, hey, look, I am okay. I don't need to be babysat, but I still need support in these areas. And so us as foreigners, we need to advocate for ourselves. Trust me, they're going to forget some things. They're going to slip up. And it's just human nature. It's natural. Most of the time, it's not malicious. I've had experiences where it was malicious and intentional. Like I said, we'll get to those files and folders. But for the most part, it's just once the season starts and the football is going, that's everyone's forefront and focus, apart from their other day job. So not that your needs aren't important, not that you don't deserve the support that you need to get to be able to live comfortably and perform at your optimal level. It's just that sometimes you just ain't on their mind. And it's not in a disrespectful way or intentional. It's just you need to make it clear, like, hey, I am still here. I do still need these things. And I'm not going to be a diva about it. 'Cause what we're not going to do is be diva foreigners, people. Okay? We're not going to go up in other people's cultures and countries and act a fool. But we are going to put our foot down about, hey, look, if I'm going to be in your country, if I'm going to be your responsibility, because even the girls from that country are the club's responsibility. We are your responsibility. We need to be taken care of. But as a foreigner, we have extra things that we need. Step up, speak up for yourself, let your things be known. Tell them about your struggles as well. That's a big one. Don't feel like you need to hide what you're going through. If you are feeling left out or scared or uncomfortable or unsure about things, tell them. If you feel like you're lacking on things that you need that are essential for your way of life personally and in terms of success for your football, let it be known. Trust me, people just need a reminder sometimes. That's it. We all need them. So give each other grace. But also take responsibility for the things that you need to do for you. Do it respectfully, do it carefully, and remember that there is a certain way to go about expressing things that you need or want without having to make it feel like, hey, you better give me this because I deserve it and I need it because I'm up in your plate. Don't be going to people like that. But also, don't feel like, and this is something my sister told me today, don't feel like you need to continuously sell yourself to get the things that you need. Once you're on the team, once you've expressed interest, once you've got that contract, once you got that jersey, once you on the team, you've sold yourself already. You did the hard part. You don't need to do it continuously anymore. To get the things that you need and you want, you just need to simply express the truth, be a little bit vulnerable, and mindful of your words. And if the club, the team, the coaches are not willing to give you those things, then you have your answer on maybe it's not the place for you, or maybe you need to have a different approach, or go to someone higher up. But you'll get your answers about if you are in a space that's going to be safe for you and if you will be taken care of. Sometimes you just got to step up and let people know what it is that you need. So, yeah. Thank you for joining me again on Foreigner Footy Files in this episode. You know what to do. Follow on all the pages. Listen on all the platforms. You can follow me on the public Instagram account for the podcast, Foreigner Footy Files. You can request to follow me on my personal account and Pinky. We've got the TikTok account, Foreigner Footy Files. I will be posting actually probably tomorrow. Which is, this episode is not going to be posted the day that I'm recording this. So for anyone listening, the TikTok will probably already be up. But so tune in for that. And if you have any comments, concerns, critiques, hit me up in the email. Hit me up in my DMs. The email for the podcast is foreignerfootyfiles@gmail.com. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody listening and sticking around. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all the loyal listeners. Like I said, this isn't something that's blowing up off the charts, but I really hope that I'm doing something that can reach other people, that I can be doing good, and that I can continue to make a difference in women's football for foreigners and for Black women foreigners. So, yeah, thank you guys. Check back in 2 weeks, and let's kick it together. Bye, y'all.